Velinor stood on the bridge of her diplomatic vessel as it approached the human warship. The sleek Ardani craft, designed to impress with its organic curves and luminescent hull, seemed almost fragile next to the human construct. The UES Defiant hung against the starfield, its design a puzzle of contradictions, angular in places, smooth in others, with visible repairs and modifications that made her engineer wince. External armor plates of varying colors suggested replacements scrounged from different sources. Exposed heat sinks jutted from the port side like metallic ribs. "This ship should not function," muttered Chief Engineer Lux, his facial ridges flushing blue with professional indignation. "Those thruster configurations violate 3 different laws of propulsion efficiency." "And yet it moves," Vela replied, quoting an ancient human philosopher she'd studied during her diplomatic training. When the communication screen activated, Vela braced herself for the fearsome creature of legend. Instead, a surprisingly normal-looking human appeared, Captain Elena Rivera, her dark hair pulled back in a practical style, the only remarkable feature being the startling directness of her gaze. "Ardani vessel, this is Captain Rivera of the United Earth ship Defiant. We acknowledge your approach. State your purpose." The human's voice carried authority without aggression. "Captain Rivera, I am Diplomat Velinor of the Ardani Confederation, acting as independent liaison. Request permission to board for diplomatic discussion." Vela maintained the perfect neutrality her 20 cycles of diplomatic service had instilled. A pause, then. "Permission granted. Follow our beacon to docking bay 3. 30 minutes later, Vela and her small team stepped through the airlock into the human vessel. The interior air carried unfamiliar scents, something sharp yet organic that tickled her olfactory sensors. Captain Rivera welcomed them personally, her uniform neat but showing signs of repeated mending. Up close, humans were even more unsettling. Their expressions shifted constantly, micro movements of facial muscles conveying information Vela could barely interpret. "Welcome aboard the Defiant," Rivera said, extending a hand in what Vela recognized as their traditional greeting ritual. The diplomat reciprocated carefully, noting the warm, firm pressure of the human's grip. As Rivera led them through corridors where crew members stepped aside with respectful nods, Vela studied her surroundings with mounting confusion. The ship's interior defied expectation. Parts appeared cobbled together. Systems juxtaposed that should interfere with each other. Cables bunched along ceilings where they hadn't been properly recessed, and interface panels displayed mismatched designs. "Your vessel has an interesting configuration," Vela noted diplomatically. Rivera laughed, the sound surprisingly melodic. 8 years of active service and 4 major refits. She's not pretty, but she gets the job done. They passed a maintenance bay where a technician manipulated the internal components of what appeared to be a propulsion stabilizer. This was the human intensity the story spoke of, not rage, but focus so complete it felt almost predatory. "Looks like we found our emergency," Diplomat Rivera said. "This is why we entered your sector. Now, I respectfully suggest you contact your defense fleet before they complicate a rescue operation." Vela stared at the unfolding attack on the screen, realization dawning. "You came because of a distress call, not for invasion?" The bridge crew exchanged glances that Vela couldn't interpret. Rivera's expression softened slightly. "That's what human warships do, Diplomat. We protect." Admiral Crack stood rigid on the command deck of the Indomitable, flagship of the Council Defense Fleet. His spine ridges extended fully, a sign of extreme stress among Vaklari military officers, as he watched the human vessel on the main view screen. "All ships maintain formation," he ordered, tentacles twitching with barely controlled anxiety. "Weapon systems on standby, shields at maximum." The fleet had formed a classic encirclement pattern around the human warship and the smaller diplomatic vessel. 20 ships against one should have been reassuring. It wasn't. "Admiral," his second-in-command whispered, "perhaps we should wait for the diplomat's report before." "I'm not risking the security of this sector on an Ardani's curiosity," Crax interrupted. He activated the communication channel, his voice steady despite his fears. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Krax of the Galactic Council Defense Fleet. Surrender your weapons and prepare for inspection." The view screen split to show both Captain Rivera's face and Diplomat Velinor's increasingly frustrated expression. "Admiral Krax, this is Diplomat Velinor. The humans are responding to a distress call from the Kaveri mining outpost. Pirates are attacking civilian miners as we speak." Simultaneously, Rivera's composed voice cut through. "Council vessel, we detected a distress signal from coordinates 227 Mark 43. We are preparing rescue operations for approximately 300 civilians under attack." The communications officer frowned at his console. "Sir, we're experiencing technical difficulties with the translation matrix. The humans' biological speech patterns are causing feedback loops in our linguistic algorithms." On screen, Rivera continued speaking, but the translation became increasingly garbled. "Need immediate access to. Untranslatable. Orbital approach vectors for. Possible threat detected. Armed response teams." The tactical officer's head frills flared in alarm. "Sir, their language centers are discussing armed response and orbital vectors." Vela's voice rose in frustration. "Admiral, there's a translation error. They're planning rescue operations, not attacks." In the silence that followed, the pirates attacking the mining colony grew bolder. 3 kilometers away, they methodically disabled the outpost's remaining defenses, believing the standoff had bought them valuable time. The tension on the Indomitable's bridge thickened when the sensor operator called out, "Energy spike from the human vessel." "They're powering weapons," the tactical officer declared. "No," Vela shouted. "They're preparing rescue shuttles." Too late. Lieutenant Maz, a weapons officer with barely 2 cycles of field experience, panicked at the readings. Following procedure for imminent threats, he released a precautionary shot, a low-power energy blast designed to demonstrate capability without causing significant damage. The bolt struck the Defiant's outer hull, scarring its port side and vaporizing an external sensor array. The bridge of the Indomitable went deadly quiet. Every officer knew the stories of human retaliation, of their legendary rage when provoked. Krax held his breath, waiting for the barrage that would surely follow. On screen, Captain Rivera merely raised an eyebrow and turned slightly to address someone off-camera. When she faced them again, her expression showed not anger, but something far more unsettling, calculated assessment. "Council vessel," she said evenly, "I understand nervous triggers, but while we posture, civilians are dying. The Defiant will continue its rescue mission. You're welcome to join us or stay out of our way." Krax blinked all 4 eyelids in confusion. Where was the retaliation? The human ship was simply reconfiguring its shields, powering up its engines, and continuing course toward the mining outpost. Before he could respond, Vela cut in, her diplomatic training abandoned in favor of blunt speech. "Admiral, I've been aboard their vessel. They came in response to a distress call, nothing more. While we waste time with this pointless standoff, pirates are killing civilians." A message from the Council High Command flashed on Krax's private screen. "Maintain position. Human vessel must not reach mining outpost. Priority Alpha." The Admiral frowned. The order made no tactical sense given the situation, yet it carried the highest authorization code. "The Council orders us to block their approach to the outpost," he announced. Vela's scales flushed deep orange in shock. That's condemning hundreds to death. Why would the Council?" Her question was interrupted by Rivera's calm voice. "Admiral, we respect your chain of command. But understand this. Those civilians called for help, and we answered. In 60 seconds, we will move to assist them. I hope we do so as allies, not adversaries." As the countdown began, Vela studied the human captain's expression and finally understood what the stories got wrong. The galaxy feared humans not for their aggression, but because they faced death with calculation instead of fear. They did not respond to threats emotionally. They simply adjusted their tactics and continued toward their objective with unwavering resolve. And that, she realized, was infinitely more frightening than mere anger could ever be. The pirate fleet emerged from behind the asteroid field, their ships modified with stolen technology and painted in jagged patterns of red and black. 9 vessels in total, 3 heavy cruisers refitted with military-grade weapons, and 6 smaller, faster attack ships designed for rapid strikes and boarding actions. Well, that simplifies things, Captain Rivera muttered as the pirate fleet appeared on tactical displays. She toggled the comm channel. Admiral Krax, I believe we now have a common problem. Before Krax could respond, the pirates struck. They had been watching the standoff between the Council fleet and the human vessel, calculating their moment of maximum advantage. Their first volley, a coordinated barrage of plasma torpedoes and disruptor fire, caught 3 Council ships completely unprepared. The Valiant, a Council corvette, spun out of formation as its port stabilizers failed. The Resolute suffered a direct hit to its command deck. The Vigilant lost shield coverage on its ventral side, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. Council vessels under attack. Krax's voice boomed across all channels. Defensive formation Delta, protect the damaged ships. The Council formation broke apart as captains followed standard procedure, retreating to predetermined defensive positions while bringing weapons to bear. It was textbook fleet doctrine, executed with precision born from centuries of tradition. It was exactly what the pirates had anticipated. They're pulling back to textbook defensive positions, observed Lieutenant Commander Chen, the Defiant's tactical officer, creating predictable firing lanes and coverage gaps. Tactics designed by committee, Rivera remarked, watching the Council ships struggle against the unpredictable attack patterns. She turned to her bridge crew. All right, people, these miners didn't call for a debate team. Let's show the neighborhood what a human rescue operation looks like. Despite being fired upon minutes earlier, she ordered the Defiant to move to protect the faltering Council defenses. Full power to forward shields. Bring us between the Vigilant and those attack ships. Weapons free, prioritize vessels targeting civilian structures. The human crew responded with practiced efficiency that bordered on prescience. Each officer anticipated commands before they were fully articulated, moving with a synchronization that made Vela, still observing from the bridge, wonder if humans shared some form of telepathy. Deploying countermeasures in Sector 49, called out the tactical officer, sending a swarm of small drones to an area that came under attack seconds later. How do they know? Vela whispered to a nearby communications specialist. The weapons officer grinned without taking her eyes off her console. We didn't. That's just where I'd attack if I were them. The pirates, recognizing the Defiant's intervention, concentrated their fire on the human vessel. Their strategy was logical. Eliminate the unknown factor first, then deal with the predictable Council ships. 3 cruisers broke formation to surround the Defiant, unleashing a barrage that would have crippled a vessel of similar size. The Defiant shuddered under the assault. Warning lights flashed across multiple stations. Port shield generator overloading, reported the engineering officer. Decks 3 through 7 reporting minor breaches. Rivera nodded calmly. Rotate shield harmonics. Bring us about to heading 147, present our starboard side. That exposes our weakest shield section, the helmsman pointed out. Exactly. They'll concentrate fire there, thinking they've found an advantage. Weapons target their lead ship's propulsion system the moment they commit. The pirates fell for the trap. As the Defiant rotated, presenting an apparently vulnerable flank, the pirate cruisers adjusted their attack vector, bringing them directly into the targeting solution Rivera had anticipated. They're committed, Chen announced. Firing solution locked. Execute. The Defiant's main cannon fired, not the expected beam weapon most modern ships employed, but a magnetically accelerated projectile that moved at a significant fraction of light speed. The round tore through the lead pirate vessel's shields as if they weren't there, shredding its engine compartment and sending it spinning helplessly. Vela watched in astonishment as the human crew celebrated the successful strike with brief exclamations and gestures, finding joy in the heart of chaos that would induce panic in most species. Meanwhile, the Council ships struggled to coordinate their response. When a pirate vessel managed to slip through their defensive screen and launch boarding pods toward the mining facility, two Council captains argued over whose responsibility it was to intercept. Rivera didn't hesitate. Launch rescue teams 1 and 2. Full combat configuration. Within 30 seconds, two shuttles departed the Defiance Bay, each carrying 6 humans in armored environmental suits. Vela observed their launch trajectory with confusion. "They're not intercepting the boarding pods," she noted. "No," Rivera confirmed. "We're targeting the facility's main life support hub. The pirates will go for the valuable ore processing center first. We'll secure the civilians while they're distracted." Admiral Crax's voice cut through on the command channel, his tone a mixture of anger and bewilderment. "Captain Rivera, what is the meaning of this? Your vessel has violated engagement protocols and fired without fleet authorization." "With respect, Admiral," Rivera replied while simultaneously approving a tactical adjustment with a hand gesture. "We can discuss protocols after we save those miners. Feel free to join us anytime." As the Defiant executed another impossible maneuver, diving between two pirate vessels and forcing them to damage each other with friendly fire, Vela realized she was witnessing something that would reshape galactic understanding of humanity. These weren't the mindless berserkers of legend, nor the technology-dependent warriors other advanced species fielded. The humans fought with an intuitive adaptability that made Council tactical computers seem like children's toys by comparison. They didn't just survive chaos, they weaponized it. Admiral Crax stared at the damage reports, flooding his command console with growing dread. 3 ships disabled, 6 more reporting critical systems failures, and the pirates were pressing their advantage with ruthless efficiency. Decades of military service hadn't prepared him for this level of tactical chaos. The Indomitable shuddered as another volley struck its port shields. Warning klaxons blared as the engineer reported, "Engine containment systems failing, Admiral. 10 minutes until complete failure." His tactical officer, face tight with strain, delivered the final blow. "Sir, the Vigilant reports their life support is critical. Estimate 300 crew with less than 20 minutes of emergency oxygen." Crax's prideful resolve crumbled. With tentacles trembling slightly, he opened a private channel to the human warship. "Captain Rivera." He began forcing each word past his professional pride. "The Council fleet requests assistance." The human captain's face appeared on his screen, her expression neutral but eyes sharp with assessment. "What kind of assistance, Admiral?" "Tactical coordination," he replied stiffly. "And emergency support for our damaged vessels." Rivera nodded once. "Understood. Transmitting tactical plan now." His staff gathered around as the human battle plan appeared on their displays. The collective intake of breath was audible across the command deck. "This can't be serious," muttered his executive officer. "They want to position their already damaged vessel as bait in the densest section of the debris field." The chief tactical officer's analysis was even more blunt. "Our simulators rate this plan as certain death. The gravitational distortions alone would tear apart their hull, even without considering enemy fire." "You want to position your damaged vessel as bait?" Crax asked Rivera incredulously. She nodded, pointing to projected pirate movements on the shared tactical display. "While your ships target their rear shield generators, the ones they don't think we can detect. The debris field masks our energy signature while providing cover from their primary weapons." Against every instinct honed through centuries of Council military doctrine, Crax found himself agreeing. "Transmitting coordinates now. May the eternal void preserve you, Captain." What followed would later become legend in Council military academies. The Defiant accelerated into the debris field, its maneuvering thrusters firing in patterns that made no sense until observers realized they were creating micro-adjustments to slip between fragments that should have shredded their hull. The vessel danced through the chaos with impossible precision, drawing the pirates deeper into the trap. Simultaneously, Council vessels moved into firing positions Rivera had identified, angles the pirates had left undefended because conventional tactical doctrine considered them too risky. On the Indomitable's bridge, officers watched in stunned silence as humans in environmental suits barely more substantial than fabric emerged onto the Defiant's hull to conduct emergency repairs in the middle of active combat. Those suits can't possibly provide adequate protection, Crax's science officer protested. The radiation levels alone. They're reinforcing the shield emitters manually, interrupted the engineer, voice thick with disbelief. Physically redirecting power conduits during battle. When the Defiant's main weapons array failed after a direct hit, Crax assumed they would retreat. Instead, Rivera's calm voice announced switching to alternative offensive measures. Within minutes, the humans had converted mining equipment from their cargo hold into makeshift torpedoes. The improvised weapons lacked the precision of military ordnance, but compensated with explosive yield that caught the pirates completely unprepared. A council gunner on the support vessel Relentless watched as his carefully calculated shot, programmed through 3 targeting computers, missed a fast-moving pirate ship. Seconds later, a human tactical officer on a joint communications channel casually reported a successful hit on the same vessel after eyeballing it. Most shocking to the council observers, the humans found joy in the heart of battle. Their communications carried expressions of encouragement, competitive banter, even laughter as they executed maneuvers that by all rational calculation should have killed them. They're not just surviving, Vela realized, watching from her position on the Defiant's bridge. They're thriving. The pirates, confronted with this unpredictable combined force, began to break formation. Their carefully planned attack disintegrated as the council ships, now employing human-suggested tactics, pressed their advantage. The mining facility reports human rescue teams have secured the civilian shelters, announced the Defiant's communications officer. 273 survivors confirmed safe. Medical teams are treating 17 critical injuries. Rivera nodded with satisfaction before turning to address Admiral Crax on the command channel. Admiral, the civilian evacuation will require approximately 40 minutes. I suggest we focus on containing the pirate vessels near the outer asteroid belt. Crax, still processing the impossibility of what he was witnessing, nodded numbly. Agreed, Captain. As the battle shifted in their favor, Vela studied the human crew with newfound understanding. Everything she'd been taught about warfare emphasized resource preservation, risk minimization, and predictable outcomes. The humans operated under entirely different principles. They leveraged disadvantages into tactical opportunities. They improvised solutions that wouldn't occur to species with more advanced technology. Most importantly, they demonstrated a psychological resilience that transformed crisis into opportunity. When a nearby console sparked with electrical feedback, a human technician simply slapped the fire out with a bare hand and continued working. The Ardani engineer beside her recoiled in horror. "Does the bat hurt?" he asked incredulously. The technician shrugged without looking up from her repairs. "Sure, but the system's back online, isn't it?" In that casual response, Vela glimpsed the fundamental truth about humanity that the galaxy had misunderstood for generations. What appeared to be recklessness was actually a profound acceptance of the universe's inherent chaos, and the determination to thrive within it rather than impose order upon it. A pirate missile breached the Defiant's lower decks during the final phase of the battle. The explosion tore through Deck 7, rupturing conduits and buckling bulkheads with catastrophic force. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the section, but not before the vacuum of space dragged equipment and supplies into the void. Velanor and Engineer Chen found themselves trapped in a maintenance junction between 2 sealed compartments. Warning lights bathed the cramped space in crimson as the ship's AI announced damage reports in a calm, measured voice that contrasted sharply with their dire situation. Hull integrity compromised. Atmosphere venting in sections 7C through 7G emergency protocols engaged. Vela's environmental suit had activated automatically, but she noted with horror that its status display already showed oxygen depletion. The Ardani diplomat tried to control her rising panic as she ran emergency protocols through her mind. Chen, meanwhile, assessed their situation with unsettling tranquility. When he noticed the pinprick puncture in his suit's forearm, he simply reached into a utility pouch and extracted what appeared to be a small, silvery square. "Is that a patch seal?" Vela asked, recognizing the general concept, if not the specific technology. "Sort of," Chen replied as he pressed it over the leak. The silvery material flowed and hardened instantly. Vela squinted at the makeshift repair. The patch had a familiar logo printed on its wrapper edge. "Is that a chewing gum wrapper?" Chen nodded. "Lined with nano-reactive emergency sealant. Standard issue." He gestured toward her suit. "Your air recycler is damaged. Let me help." Before she could protest, the human engineer had removed a panel from her suit's processor unit and was reconnecting severed microtubing with his bare fingers, the insulated gloves discarded beside him as too bulky for detail work. "Aren't you concerned about radiation exposure?" she asked, watching him work with exposed circuitry mere centimeters from his unprotected skin. "Concerned? Sure. Dead? Not yet." He grinned, revealing teeth that seemed too white and uniform. "Ship's medical officer can fix radiation damage. Can't fix suffocation if we don't get your recycler working." As they worked to restore emergency power to the section, Chen maintained a steady conversation, jumping between topics with the same casual ease he displayed while rewiring critical systems. He described Earth cuisine. "You haven't lived until you've tried Thai street food," showed pictures of his daughter's artwork from his personal device, and recounted the time his previous ship crashed into an ice planet. "We weren't supposed to survive that one either," he chuckled, using a laser cutter to access a sealed maintenance tunnel. "Crashed at terminal velocity. Fractured the hull in 17 places. Captain gave us 2 hours to get the emergency decon working before the temperature dropped below survival levels." Vela stared at him. "What happened?" "We got it working in 90 minutes, he shrugged, then held a snowball fight while waiting for rescue. With death literally knocking at the hull, Vela finally asked the question burning through her mind. "Why aren't you afraid?" Chen paused from reconnecting severed power conduits, his expression turning thoughtful. "Humans don't ignore death," he explained, his voice softer than before. "We just don't let it stop us from living." As they worked, he described humanity's contradictory nature, how they prepared for disaster yet leaped before looking, how they fought fiercest when protecting others rather than themselves. "Most species evolve either as predators or prey," he explained. "Predators evolved confidence, prey evolved caution. Humans? We were both. We hunted dangerous animals, but larger predators hunted us. We adapted to be cautious enough to recognize danger, but confident enough to face it anyway." A sudden explosion rocked the ship, throwing them both against a bulkhead. Chen instinctively positioned himself to absorb the impact, protecting Vela from the worst of the collision. "That's going to leave a mark," he winced, touching his ribs gingerly before returning immediately to their repair work. "You're injured," Vela pointed out, noting the awkward way he now held his torso. "Probably just a fracture," he dismissed. "The important thing is getting emergency power back online before the structural integrity field fails completely." Through the comm system, they heard Captain Rivera coordinating the boarding party onto the pirate mothership. The human strike team moved with ruthless efficiency, their communications reflecting a unity of purpose that transcended their individual safety concerns. Breach Team Alpha in position. Engineering secured. Survivors contained. Command deck 20 meters ahead. Heavy resistance. Then, an unexpected report. "Captain, we found civilians." Looks like captives from previous raids. Multiple species, poor condition. River's voice carried that distinctive human blend of compassion and resolve. Medical team to your position. Security team maintain perimeter. No one gets left behind. Chen smiled at this news as he finally restored power to their section. Emergency lights shifted from red to yellow, and the distant rumble of life support systems returning online filled the junction with blessed sound. That's why we fight the way we do, he said, nodding toward the comm speaker. Not for territory or resources or even our own survival. We fight hardest for those who cannot fight for themselves. As the bulkhead finally lifted, allowing them access to the main corridor, Vela understood something profound about humanity. Their seeming recklessness wasn't a death wish or biological quirk. It was the physical manifestation of a species that had evolved to care more about collective survival than individual risk. The galaxy had misunderstood humans entirely. Their strength wasn't technological or physical. It was empathy transformed into determination. The pirate leader, a Taurian named Vexstar, sat in the Defiant's secure holding area, his massive frame barely contained by the reinforced chair. 4 curved horns adorned his skull, 3 broken at the tips, battle trophies from previous encounters. His crimson scales bore the distinctive scarification marks of the Outer Rim mercenary clans. Captain Rivera stood before him, flanked by 2 security officers. Vela and Admiral Krax observed from behind a transparent barrier, their expressions reflecting very different emotions, curiosity and apprehension, respectively. "Let's not waste time," Rivera began, her voice calm but firm. "You targeted a civilian mining installation with enough firepower to level a small moon. Why?" Vexstar's mouth split in what passed for a Taurian smile, all teeth and no warmth. The ore was valuable. "No," Rivera replied immediately. "The Kaveri outpost mines standard-grade beryllium. Barely worth the fuel you spent getting here, much less a 12-ship assault force." The pirate leader's inner eyelids flickered, a subtle tell that confirmed Rivera's assessment. "You had military-grade weapons, council encryption protocols, and tactical formations that suggest professional training," she continued. "Pirates don't fight like that. Someone backed you." For a long moment, only the soft hum of the ship's systems broke the silence. Then, unexpectedly, Vexstar laughed, a rumbling sound like distant thunder. "You were supposed to fight the council, not save them," he spat, leaning forward against his restraints. "The plan was perfect. Your ship responds to the distress call, council forces engage you, and while you destroyed each other, we collect our payment." Admiral Krax stepped forward, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Payment from whom?" The pirate's gaze shifted to the admiral. "Your own people, of course. The Preservation Directory sends their regards." Vela watched confusion spread across Krax's features. "The directory? That's impossible. They're an advisory council for species preservation and cultural heritage." Vexstar laughed again. "Is that what they tell you? How wonderfully naive." He turned back to Rivera. "They've spent decades isolating humanity through misinformation. They fear what you represent." "And what exactly is that?" Rivera asked, crossing her arms. "Change," the pirate replied simply. "Humans adapt too quickly, learn too eagerly. Your species doesn't respect the established order of things." His voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. "The directory fears what happens when you fully join galactic society." Rivera nodded to a security officer who activated a data terminal. Holographic files appeared in the air between them, classified documents bearing council security seals. "We found these in your command ship's database," she explained. "Fabricated reports of human aggression, suppressed diplomatic initiatives, even staged attacks blamed on Earth forces." Admiral Krax's complexion paled as he scanned the files. Some bore his own department's authorization codes. Others contained directives he carried out without questioning their source. "This can't be real," he protested weakly. "The council would never." "Not the full council," Vexstar corrected. "Just the directory and their supporters." For centuries, they've maintained the galactic balance by controlling information, resources, and, when necessary, eliminating threats. He looked directly at Rivera. You humans are their greatest challenge yet. You can't be controlled, can't be predicted. Vela processed this revelation with growing horror. The emergency broadcast when we detected the human ship. Standard directory protocol, the pirate confirmed, designed to trigger fear responses based on carefully cultivated misinformation. Rivera turned to Crax, whose usually commanding presence had diminished with each new revelation. Admiral, how many times has your fleet responded to human incursions in the past decade? 17, he answered automatically, military precision overriding his shock. And how many actual engagements with human vessels? Crax's eyes widened. None. Always near misses. The human ships always withdrew before contact. Because there were no human ships, Rivera explained gently. At least, not the ones you were sent to intercept. She displayed another file, this one bearing Earth government encryption. We've had our suspicions for years. Strange diplomatic rebuffs, inexplicable hostility from species we'd never met, carefully engineered misunderstandings that always seemed to escalate at critical moments. Vela stepped forward, her diplomatic training helping her connect pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed. If what you're saying is true, then the directory has been manipulating both sides, keeping humanity isolated while convincing the Council that humans are dangerous and unpredictable. Rivera nodded. We could have forced our way into galactic politics years ago. Our ships are faster, our weapons more effective than most Council models, not because of superior technology, but because we designed for chaos rather than control. She gestured toward the view screen showing the aftermath of the battle. But we chose patience over confrontation. We preferred to earn our place through actions rather than intimidation. Admiral Crax studied the human captain with new understanding. All these years, we thought we were containing a threat. You were, Vexstar interjected, his tone mocking. Just not the one you were told. Humans don't threaten your safety. They threaten your comfortable illusions of control. Vela moved closer to the barrier, addressing Rivera directly. Captain, if you've known about this manipulation, why didn't your government expose it? Who would believe us? Rivera asked simply. We needed evidence, and more importantly, we needed witnesses. She nodded toward Vela and Crax. Now we have both. As the implications settled over them, Vela suddenly understood the truth in all its irony. The real emergency wasn't the human warship entering the sector. It was the imminent exposure of centuries of deception designed to keep humanity contained. And containment, like most strategies against humans, had just spectacularly failed. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with unprecedented energy as representatives from 87 worlds filled the tiered seating. Emergency sessions were rare enough. Ones called with only 6 hours' notice were virtually unheard of in a governmental body that typically scheduled meetings decades in advance. At the center of the chamber, the evidence collected from the pirate mothership, displayed on massive holographic screens, irrefutable proof of the preservation directory's manipulation spanning centuries. The 7 members of the directory sat in a special section, surrounded by Council security officers. Their typical robes of office had been replaced with simple gray tunics that marked them as subjects of formal inquiry. High Chancellor Morrow, eldest of the Thalasian species and nominal head of the Council, called the session to order. We face a moment unprecedented in our history, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of tradition. Evidence has been presented that members of our own governing body have engaged in systematic deception regarding humanity. Director Quill, head of the implicated Preservation Directory, rose to speak. His avian features betrayed no emotion as he addressed the chamber. What we did to preserve galactic stability, he declared. Humans represent a fundamental threat to the established order, not through aggression, but through their very nature. He activated his own presentation, showing statistical models of human expansion and adaptation rates compared to other species. They changed too quickly. They absorb and transform ideas at rates that destabilize carefully balanced systems. Their inclusion in galactic affairs would trigger cascading disruptions across every sector. Velinor, now formally representing both her Ardani Confederation and, unofficially, human interests, stepped forward. Her formal diplomatic attire gleamed under the chamber lights as she addressed the gathered representatives. "I witnessed the events in Sector 7 firsthand," she began. "I saw humans risk their lives for strangers. I observed their captain offer assistance to vessels that had fired upon them minutes earlier. I experienced their willingness to sacrifice for others." Her scales shifted to the deep blue of absolute certainty in Ardani emotional signaling. What the Directory fears isn't human aggression, it's human compassion coupled with human adaptability. She gestured toward Captain Rivera, who sat with Admiral Krax and Chen in the witnesses section. "They don't seek to conquer the galaxy. They seek to understand it." Chancellor Morrow studied the human representatives thoughtfully. "Captain Rivera, the Council would hear from you directly." River approached the central podium with the measured confidence that characterized her species, where most beings would display nervousness before the assembled governance of thousands of worlds. She showed only calm focus. "Esteemed representatives," she began, "for decades, Earth and its colonies have attempted peaceful contact with the galactic community. Each time, we encountered inexplicable hostility or silence." She paused, surveying the chamber. "We could have forced the issue. Our ships can outmaneuver most defensive systems. Our adaptability gives us tactical advantages in almost any confrontation." A murmur ran through the chamber at this frank assessment. "But force was never our intention," River continued. "We chose patience because we understand something fundamental about civilization. True strength comes from cooperation, not domination." She activated a new holographic display, one showing hundreds of human ships holding position at the edges of charted space. The Council representatives gasped collectively. "These vessels have been maintaining observation positions for years," Rivera explained, "not as an invasion force, but as extended hands of friendship waiting for the right moment. Each carries scientists, diplomats, artists, and teachers, not soldiers." Director Quill scoffed loudly. "This proves our point. They've surrounded our territories without detection. If not for our preventative measures, they would have infiltrated every aspect of Council society by now." "Infiltrated?" Engineer Chen called out unexpectedly from the witness section. "We just want to trade recipes and swap stories, maybe learn how you built those fancy quantum communicators." The chamber erupted in a mixture of laughter and alarmed commentary. Chancellor Morrow restored order with a simple raise hand. "The evidence before us is clear. The Directory acted without authorization, manipulated Council policy, and endangered countless lives to maintain their deception." Her ancient eyes turned to Rivera. "What does humanity seek as restitution for these wrongs?" The human captain's response silenced the chamber. "We seek no punishment or reparation," Rivera said. "Instead, we offer alliance. Earth formally requests the establishment of a human embassy and mutual defense pact with the Galactic Council." After hours of deliberation, the Council voted overwhelmingly to accept humanity's proposal. The emergency protocol that had begun with fear ended with a historic moment: the formal recognition of Earth as a Council associate member, with Velinor appointed as the first official liaison between humanity and the galaxy at large. As the Defiant prepared to depart, carrying news of the historic agreement back to Earth, Admiral Krax approached Captain Rivera on the observation deck. The viewport before them displayed the vast Council fleet now arranged in an honor formation rather than a defensive posture. "There's something I still don't understand," he admitted. "Given your capabilities, why haven't humans expanded further into the galaxy? You clearly have the technology and adaptability to do so." Rivera smiled, looking out at the stars scattered like possibilities across the void. "The same reason you don't move into a neighbor's house without invitation," she replied. "The universe has enough space for all of us to grow together." As the Defiance engines powered up for departure, the Council communication network lit up with unprecedented activity. Hundreds of human diplomatic vessels emerged from their waiting positions, their captains requesting peaceful contact after years of patient observation. The emergency broadcasts across Sector 7 changed from warnings to welcomes as the age of isolation ended and the age of understanding began. Across 1,000 worlds, beings of all forms and philosophies contemplated the same profound realization. The most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their warships. It was their capacity to transform enemies into allies and fear into hope. What the Directory fears isn't human aggression, it's human compassion coupled with human adaptability. She gestured toward Captain Rivera, who sat with Admiral Krax and Chen in the witnesses section. They don't seek to conquer the galaxy. They seek to understand it. Chancellor Morrow studied the human representatives thoughtfully. Captain Rivera, the Council would hear from you directly. River approached the central podium with the measured confidence that characterized her species, where most beings would display nervousness before the assembled governance of thousands of worlds. She showed only calm focus. Esteemed representatives, she began. For decades, Earth and its colonies have attempted peaceful contact with the galactic community. Each time, we encountered inexplicable hostility or silence. She paused, surveying the chamber. We could have forced the issue. Our ships can outmaneuver most defensive systems. Our adaptability gives us tactical advantages in almost any confrontation. A murmur ran through the chamber at this frank assessment. But force was never our intention, River continued. We chose patience because we understand something fundamental about civilization. True strength comes from cooperation, not domination. She activated a new holographic display, one showing hundreds of human ships holding position at the edges of charted space. The Council representatives gasped collectively. These vessels have been maintaining observation positions for years, Rivera explained, not as an invasion force, but as extended hands of friendship waiting for the right moment. Each carries scientists, diplomats, artists, and teachers, not soldiers. Director Quill scoffed loudly. This proves our point. They've surrounded our territories without detection. If not for our preventative measures, they would have infiltrated every aspect of Council society by now. Infiltrated? Engineer Chen called out unexpectedly from the witness section. We just want to trade recipes and swap stories, maybe learn how you built those fancy quantum communicators. The chamber erupted in a mixture of laughter and alarmed commentary. Chancellor Morrow restored order with a simple raise hand. The evidence before us is clear. The Directory acted without authorization, manipulated Council policy, and endangered countless lives to maintain their deception. Her ancient eyes turned to Rivera. What does humanity seek as restitution for these wrongs? The human captain's response silenced the chamber. We seek no punishment or reparation, Rivera said. Instead, we offer alliance. Earth formally requests the establishment of a human embassy and mutual defense pact with the Galactic Council. After hours of deliberation, the Council voted overwhelmingly to accept humanity's proposal. The emergency protocol that had begun with fear ended with a historic moment. The formal recognition of Earth as a Council associate member, with Velanor appointed as the first official liaison between humanity and the galaxy at large. As the Defiant prepared to depart carrying news of the historic agreement back to Earth, Admiral Krax approached Captain Rivera on the observation deck. The viewport before them displayed the vast Council fleet now arranged in an honor formation rather than a defensive posture. There's something I still don't understand, he admitted. Given your capabilities, why haven't humans expanded further into the galaxy? You clearly have the technology and adaptability to do so. Rivera smiled, looking out at the stars scattered like possibilities across the void. The same reason you don't move into a neighbor's house without invitation, she replied. The universe has enough space for all of us to grow together. As the Defiance engines powered up for departure, the Council communication network lit up with unprecedented activity. Hundreds of human diplomatic vessels emerged from their waiting positions, their captains requesting peaceful contact after years of patient observation. The emergency broadcasts across Sector 7 changed from warnings to welcomes as the age of isolation ended and the age of understanding began. Across 1,000 worlds, beings of all forms and philosophies contemplated the same profound realization. The most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their warships. It was their capacity to transform enemies into allies and fear into hope.